quintessentially Hellenic Greek name, and they have objected ever since 1991 when Yugoslavia fell apart and one of its constituent republics declared independence as the Republic of Macedonia. Now, Greece's northern province, which Thessaloniki is the capital, is also called Macedonia, and Greece blocked its northern neighbours' EU and NATO accession over the name.
The BBC's Mark Woe. Parts of Australia suffering through a record-breaking heat wave. Got up to 115 degrees at the airport in Melbourne. News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomas. Verizon thinks slipping some 800 workers in its troubled media business.
The company says the cuts of media and advertising employees is needed to help it reorganize the troubled division after spending roughly $10 billion buying up former internet pioneers Yahoo and AOL. The wireless company had hoped to create an ad business that could compete with Google and Facebook, but Verizon found benefits from integrating those two companies were less than expected. The new CEO of Verizon's media division says priorities will now include focusing on mobile and video products and stemming declines with desktop users. Rhonda Rochster reporting.
There are a number of colleges and universities postponing tuition payments and offering grants to students. Finances have been tied up by the partial government shutdown. Statewide college systems in New York, Connecticut, and Nevada agreed to delay payments for affected students. At least 20 other schools have made similar offers. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Reno's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your co-host, Brendan Trainor, along with Leland Faegre, and our special guest, Jennifer Terhune Green, is on the line with us today. And we, again, and it's a nice brisk day here in winter in Reno Town Mall. We have quite a bit to talk about. Even as we were coming to the studio, the news broke that Roger Stone was arrested by a SWAT team, apparently.
Yeah, because he's such a
Guns
dangerous
drawn.
man.
Yeah, I know.
He's very dangerous.
Such a danger to civil society. And
Guns drawn.
Yep, guns drawn. The whole thing.
So you know those SWAT teams need practice, right?
Well,
They do, and what helped was the CNN coverage, because apparently they were tipped off. Because
Okay.
Do they have some embedded reporters?
They probably relied on them to tell them which was the right house to raid, because they're notorious for picking on the wrong house.
Like I said, they need practice.
Yes. So poor Mr. Stone has got a lot of process problems, but again, it doesn't point to anything that happened before Mueller started his investigation. These are all crimes that were either preceded the campaign, like Manafort, or just evolved out of the actual prosecution. So
process crimes.
Yep, that's what they call it. And the poor guy says he's just about bankrupt. He's going to have a federal public defender, according to the news report. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, he's I don't know that much about him. I know that he calls himself, self-identifies as a libertarian, and maybe he is to some extent, and he's called the dirty trickster, but we need tricksters in society. They're a vital part of our social fabric.
Well, I know a lot about him because he's just like you and me.
Yeah, he's just an ordinary...
Yeah, he's
an ordinary freedom-loving guy.
He's been in the trenches of liberty for as long as we've been in there.
Yes.
He looks a little bit older than ourselves, but that's what he is. He's
Yes.
just a street fighter.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder Trump decided or felt comfortable around him.
Right.
Because he's like himself. He's just a fighter.
Yep. Okay, well, so we have to move on, though, because we don't know that much about it. The arraignment today was just to identify that he is really Roger Stone, and they didn't. The SWAT team didn't grab the wrong guy, as they sometimes do. But,
well, I did hear Alan Dershowitz before I left this morning.
Okay.
And he effectively dismissed Mueller's investigation summarily because he hasn't been able to come up with any collusion And all of these are just, as we described, process crimes, and so they could get anybody on this kind of thing.
Right.
You know, if they were to sit down and they had maybe traffic signal footage of you making a right turn, and you thought you maybe have made a left turn. Well, that's your recollection. You made a left turn. Well, it turns out, you know, they have you. You made a right turn, so they got you. You know, it's one of those.
That's our other special guest, Jameson Green. He's on the line with us as well.
Yeah. He is, and I don't think he's having much to say about anything, as it turns out.
Right. And besides the arrest of another person who was associated with the Trump campaign, but without any actual concrete evidence against the Trump campaign, we do have something happening on our own doorstep, which is the crisis in Venezuela. And Mr. Donald Trump is listening again to his hawks in the administration, and it's just a question of what kind of mission creep is going to go on from here. And we have President Maduro. People are saying that the election was invalid, although I understand, and we haven't had a chance to delve in it in real depth, but I understand it was certified as basically free and fair. There is a lot of corruption there. The military is corrupt, and the government is corrupt. It's a typical South American KTHO government, except with the socialist rhetoric.
Yeah, the typical type of government you would assume would be in that part of the world, yeah.
Yes.
but it wasn't always that way.
No. It was the richest country, and they are incompetent, and they did drive it into the ground. However, how much of that was U.S. sanctions is a good question. I mean, if we didn't sanction the government so much, would the economic downturn have been so precipitous? And another interesting point is that for those who believe that the U.S. Constitution gives the federal government the right to print money rather than borrowing it from a bank, even if the bank is a central bank, I mean, this shows you what happens when the government is given the power to print money, because they were printing their own banknotes, and there's no control over that, and we would have the same thing if these people that believe that that's what the Article 1 of the Constitution says ever got into power.
And the nationalization of corporations.
Yes.
They go hand in glove.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have almost de facto nationalization now, though, rather than de jure.
By regulation.
Yeah, by regulation, and also by sheer the corporations, the larger corporations that need the federal privileges, they voluntarily associate themselves with the federal government, and they ask for regulations oftentimes. Yes, they do, because they can better exploit a regulation than a smaller entity could.
Was that old expression, you scratch a monopoly and underneath it you'll find the government?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's almost like if you scratch almost any social problem underneath it, you'll find the government. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that it's interesting what's going on in Venezuela, because we're seeing like China and Russia and Turkey are backing Maduro, and then the United States and Britain were backing the new guy, Guaido. I'm probably butchering the names. But it's interesting to me because it's almost like we're seeing the usual suspects lining up here.
Yes, and we are.
I don't know exactly what's going on. It's like the chess game that is playing off, around the world has now come to Venezuela. And I am very doubtful that we'll ever find out what's actually going on. I mean, I don't know. I know that when you get all these different governments involved, Venezuela is just a pawn at this point. And their government is just a pawn. And I mean, we'll see what happens. But
right. Yeah, it does seem rather formulaic to me, too. And we're down to a break. Welcome back with us, Jennifer.
I'm glad to be here.
Hey, everyone. Dave Escher here, introducing you to our new store, the Nevada Marketplace.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. My name is Brendan Trainor. I'm your co-host along with Leland Faegre and our special calling guest Jennifer Terhune Green, and young Jameson Green is on the air as well sometimes.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so we were talking about Venezuela, and I'd like to point out a couple of things here. First of all, that the whole Lima group is, you were talking about how the power, is divided between the basically what I would call the unipolar world and the multipolar world, basically, is what we're breaking it down to. Mm-hmm. And so we have Russia and China and Iran and Turkey. Turkey is interesting, backing Maduro, and we have the Lima group, except for Nicaragua, which is all the countries in South America, the Organization of American States, basically, except for Nicaragua and Cuba, backing the insurgency against Maduro. And like you said, that is very interesting because, Russia sent those planes down to Venezuela last month, a couple of bombers. They have some kind of long-standing relationship with Venezuela, and Russia rarely deserts its allies or friends. So they are, and then Putin's whole thing is non-intervention in the sovereign affairs of other countries. That's been his theme since he came on the world stage.
Since the end of the Cold War, right?
Yeah, 2007 is basically when he stepped forward and had solved enough of Russia's internal problems to step forward on the world stage again. And so he's talking about international law, and we seldom talk about international law. We talk about the liberal rules-based order, where we make the rules and we reserve the right to enforce them. And also arrayed against him, Maduro, is Brazil, Colombia, and interestingly, Guyana. And Guyana used to be called British Guyana. So the British are involved as well on the border with Venezuela. And, if it's a standoff and and the military stays with Maduro, he could probably survive. But if the military deserts him, if he doesn't keep feeding them with the perks and benefits that they need, then it's all bets are off for his regime. But, another thing about Venezuelan socialism, this was not anything close to Cuban or Russian or Chinese communism. That we didn't hear any reports of people were put in prison, yes, and that's a shame and that's bad. But we didn't hear any reports of people being lined up and shot or anything like that.
Not yet, but they are in the streets, and they are confrontational, or will be shortly, and that'll be interesting to see how the military handles this.
Yes, it will be.
Will they open up on their fellow citizens? I mean, they see these people in the streets. They're one and the same, really.
Yep.
So we're going to find out pretty shortly, I think.
Okay. Well,
and I feel like Putin is very good. He is a really good chess player. And I feel like he is very good at sort of gauging places where he steps in. And I'm not sure I don't know if he's deliberately doing a power play, but I know that in the past, it's like he gauges his moments very carefully to step in and exert Russian power. And he does it very carefully and in a way that, he is definitely in control of the situation. He did that in Syria, and I feel like he's doing the same sort of thing here. He's sort of stepping in, like, we're here, and it really changes the balance of power. Because he's like the only one that really can effectively balance out the United States. So he really plays these games. He's a chess player. I feel like it shows in his foreign policy all the time.
It does. And, but, they also sent, Russia also sent technicians to try and salvage the mess that the socialists in Venezuela made of the oil production regime. And so he has Russian technologists over there trying to train these guys in the right way to do things. And plus they put forth some kind of economic proposal that would moderate the socialism and, leave some aspects of it and not leave others.
There's breaking news here on Drudge that there's going to be a shutdown agreement apparently reached. An announcement set for 1 p.m. So.
Okay. Well,
interesting.
That's interesting.
See how that turns out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Details to remain to be seen, I'm sure.
Yep. In fact, there's no details on Drudge. It's just a headline. So.
Yeah. And the headline this morning was flights delayed out of New York and Philadelphia, out of the Northeast, due to air traffic control problems. So
yeah, see, LaGuardia, Reagan, Newark, and Philadelphia were all affected by that. So.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that when the politicians start truly feeling the heat, that then something would happen. And I kind of think that that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
They kind of let it go as long as they could, and you have the two sides are upset at each other and kind of doing like a game of chicken here. But the politicians don't want to lose their jobs. So I feel like it must be reaching a breaking point. People are getting very upset about this.
It usually comes to it being very serious circumstances or deadlines that provoke both sides to come together and figure it out.
Yeah.
So we'll see who saves some face and who loses some face, and hopefully it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
I know Trump is talking about some kind of down payment on the wall, so that, and the wall is not really the greatest idea in the world. I'm sorry if I offend anybody.
It isn't, but if you have a welfare state, you have to have a wall.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
But
I am also not a fan of the wall. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to be a tremendous money drain. I mean, oh my gosh, it's going to cost so much money, and I doubt it will even work. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I think it will work.
We still have a very large border on both sides of the country with ocean that people can get in through with boats, to say nothing of our very large northern border.
Well, I have to take the other side on this. I think it's a very serious situation, and I don't think. The concept of a wall is frankly disturbing. You don't want to have those, but as long as you have a welfare state, that's the magnet. That's the incentive for people to come up. And I don't mean just transfer payments. I'm talking about public schools. I'm talking about the healthcare system.
Yeah, but we had public schools in the early 20th century.
Right, but not the accumulation.
The whole thing was to get the immigrants into society.
Yeah.
And I'm against public schools.
Yeah, but how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, look.
There's no doubt that we have incentivized this illegal immigration. But the wall, and I'm not saying that there's not a problem with illegal immigration. I just don't think the wall is the fix, because it's outdated technology that's going to, cost a tremendous amount of money.
But the welfare state can't be dismantled, though. So it's a stopgap measure, but it has to be done under the circumstances. This is triage. That's what Trump represents: is triage. We have to stop the arterial bleeding, or we will lose everything. That's what this is.
This is going to be a huge, huge money hole. It's going to be a money black hole.
It already is.
It's
every one of these people that get across costs us $70,000 a year. Every one.
These figures are bandied about by both sides of the issue.
Think about it.
It doesn't count the contributions that they make. Not how many of them are really here for welfare, and how many of them here for work.
They're not working.
They are.
They're
working.
in camps.
No. Well, all right. These people are, because they're applying for
that's
asylum.
That's what we're talking about. And the reason they're in camps is because there's now an exaggerated inflow of these people. They have to be dealt with immediately. They all have to eat. They all have to be sheltered.
Yeah, and the wall is not going to be built for years.
That's right. So there has to be an attendance of federal authority on that border until that can be done.
In some cases, the wall will actually enable people to seek asylum, because it'll be up above the actual border. The only place they can build the wall is above the border, and so people can just come in front of the wall, and they'll be in U.S. territory and can claim asylum.
They can do that, but now they're going to be sent back to Mexico. At least in San Isidro.
They'd have to change the law.
A huge concern that I have with it as a freedom lover is that if you look at our policy towards the illegal immigrants, we're building holding facilities for them all over the country.
Yes.
And now we're building walls. Walls can be used to keep people in as well. Those holding facilities can be transferred into prisons. I think that we're setting up the infrastructure to, enslave our population even more potentially.
Right.
FEMA camps.
Ron Paul made that point in one of the debates in 2012, and he's right about that.
It's very dangerous. I would much rather see a system where we make it, more accessible for people who want to get here legally, and then at the same time, if someone is caught or arrested for any crime, we check their citizenship. If they're not a citizen, then they get deported immediately. And we need to be checking citizenship when we vote.
Yeah, but you've heard...
And I think if we did those three things and also started de-incentivizing with, kind of shutting off some of these welfare programs, or at least making them citizenship-based, that I think we could solve this problem without this massive drain of a wall that I don't think is going to work anyway.
But not even the Republican Party has the stomach to do that. And that's not going to be tolerated by the left. So we're left with a wall.
But the left isn't tolerating the wall either.
Well, not yet, but it's been forced. There's an agreement.
Yeah, but nobody's even talking about de-incentivizing the welfare state, and that's what we should be talking about.
That is correct, but we're not talking about it. So in the meantime, it's triage. We have to stop the arterial bleeding of the nation. That's what we're up against here. And I think there's a naivete about this that exists across the political spectrum. It's very important that we come to terms with the fact that these people are going to be a drain on our culture. And, I can't go to San Francisco without going across the radio dial without hearing Spanish language television stations. And we're up against a hard break. Stay with us.
Talking to Victor from Precision Diamonds. Victor, I remember you in the old days.
To find out what's hot and happening, join Lady J for Smooth Jazz 2-Top.
Join me Saturdays, 10 to noon, here on America Matters.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
Hello, and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Reno's Freedom Talk Radio. My name is Brendan Trainor, and I'm here with Leland Faegre and Jennifer Terhune Green, and little Jameson Green is chipping in on occasion. And we are going to give a shout-out to our sponsor who has been with us for all this time, Reno Computer Services, and they are Reno's premier IT provider, computer repair, malware removal, and data recovery service. And they will do an excellent job for either your home PCs or at work. They can be reached at Reno Computer Services at www.renocomputerservices.com, or phone them up at 775-737-4400. So we had a good debate on immigration, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the latest skirmish in the culture wars, which was it's been viral for over a week. It's something it has touched a nerve in America.
You're not going to talk about those Covington kids.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to talk about those Catholic high school boys in trouble. It's like a Roger Corman B movie sometimes, life is. But the idea that what we had here was a group of Catholic high school kids from Covington, and Covington is across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. Covington used to be the place where if you were a straight-laced Yankee that wanted to indulge in a little sin, you would cross the river and go to Covington.
Now, how would you know that, Brenda?
But it is a relatively poor working-class town, and these were not privileged kids at all. But, of course, and they were triggering all kinds of things because of the smirk. And so instead of anything real or tangible, we had these kids were first subjected to a verbal abuse by an outlier group called the Black Hebrew Nation or something, which is one of those offshoots of people that believe that they're descended from the lost tribes of Israel. And like I've said before, if you're lost, this is the 21st century, pick up a cell phone, we'll find you.
GPS is on there.
But anyway, so they're one of these mystical offshoots, but they're pretty nasty. They were cursing the boys and calling them, the slang for gay and everything else.
That's the thing, is they're all vulgar.
Yes, I know.
I mean, who's not sick of that at this point?
I know.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Here.
And so the kids were down there for the March for Life. They said that their school sent them off there every year for the last 10 years, a Catholic high school, of course. And on the way to these, they were just waiting for their bus to take them back to Kentucky. And apparently they came across a souvenir stand, and a bunch of them bought MAGA hats, Make America Great Again red hats, which are sold as souvenirs in Washington, D.C. According to the story, they didn't bring them down there. They didn't deliberately wear them. They just bought a bunch of them to wear back home. And then we have this American Indian, Native American.
You mean Nathan Phillips?
Yeah, Nathan Phillips. He has been involved in several agitprop confrontations.
Yeah, he's a community organizer.
Yes.
You can't be a community organizer without one of those drums, though.
Right.
you gotta have one of those drums.
So he and his followers approached the boys after they'd been harassed by the Black Hebrew nationalists, and he started beating a drum, and the kids didn't know what was going on. At first they thought it was cool, but then when he kept standing there and beating the drum, they didn't know what was happening. And he approached this one man named Sandman. I have his last name. I don't have his first name right in front of me. So it was coming down to the Sandman confrontation, or the Sandman standoff.
Well, he was committing face crime.
Yes, he was.
An Orwellian face crime activist, apparently.
Yes, and the George Orwell in 1984 wrote about how society would become so authoritarian that they could arrest you for your looks. And this is, we didn't arrest him, but this is what the left has done to this young man.
But that's what it's come to.
Right.
We are there now.
And
it kind of shows how one image can turn into an entire story. Whether it's,
there was no content. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. It's very visual and very dumbed down. We're just looking at a picture and making judgments about everybody involved.
Right.
And that's really a scary thing to do.
Not only is it scary, but the net result was that it was actually the opposite of what we assumed about the image.
Exactly. The media jumped on this. Yeah, the media jumped all over this narrative for a day or two, and there was nothing but, I'm so triggered by this smirk. This is white privilege. And I was thinking of how many other Catholic high school graduate white people have the smirk. And, of course, Judge Kavanaugh is the first that comes to mind. He definitely has the smirk. And another one is Tom Brady.
Tom Brady,
yeah. And as a longtime Jets fan, I can tell you that Tom Brady's smirk really triggers me.
Oh, yeah. Just brings out the worst.
I am not a Tom Brady fan. I am very upset that they are in another Super Bowl. It's unbelievable.
I know.
Anyway.
And talk about your culture wars. Half the country hates Tom Brady and half loves him. So there's another divide.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So he's a white Catholic graduate from San Mateo, California. He went to a Catholic high school. And so did Jared Goff of the Los Angeles Rams, his opponent in the Super Bowl. He graduated from a Malibu County Catholic high school. So they're both privileged white boys, and so they don't deserve anything they've ever earned because they got it out of their privilege.
But I'm hearing and I'm seeing that it's okay to be white, isn't it?
That's in fact, you've seen my "Okay to Be White" shirt, right, Jennifer?
I remember us talking about this last year. April was It's Okay to Be White month.
Well, if you were here, you would see it again because he's donning it today for all of us. It's quite interesting.
And as a funny aside, when President Trump visited Reno, this is before he was elected, and I went to go hear him speak, he actually was talking about Tom Brady and what a great guy Tom Brady was. I kid you not. Of all the things he said, that stuck with me. I was like, are you kidding me?
Model of whiteness, is it? And by the way, going back to Nathan Phillips, because we're probably going to have to segue out of this story here. We don't spin records here, folks. We spin information. And that Nathan Phillips, you know what he's described as a Vietnam, or he's self-described as a Vietnam vet.
Yes.
Right.
But he was not a Vietnam vet. But he did serve in the U.S. Marines. How did he serve in the U.S. Marines? Do you want to
well, how did he?
He was a refrigerator repairman.
Hey, it's a tough job. Somebody has to do it.
Now, no, somebody has to do it, but couldn't that be outsourced to the private sector?
Oh, everything.
So, yeah.
I think the whole military could be outsourced.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
I mean, and plumbers. I mean, where does this go? You know?
I know.
One thing that strikes me about this story is it standard policy for Catholic schools to send students to participate in protests relating to abortion? That off the top sounds like a really bad idea.
No, is that why they were there?
They were there. Right? They were there for the March for Life, but it's. I don't.
Well, but you know.
You'd be surprised at the number of Catholic schools that won't touch the issue with a 10-foot pole. I mean,
I would think that seems a little more appropriate to me. I mean, these kids shouldn't be sent by their schools to participate in political rallies. I mean, if they want to from their family and their own perspective, I don't know. That just right off the top strikes me as a really bad idea.
Yeah, except that they can't fill the queues with or the pews without more people. So naturally, they're concerned about abortion. But now, going back to this Nathan Phillips guy, as a community activist, he must have been there someone must have sent him there in the same way that the Catholic diocese may have authorized their trip, right? I mean, it was all confrontational from all sides, was it not?
Well, our intrepid journalists have not revealed that factoid to us. He apparently ratted or called out, there was a group of kids again, high school kids, that had some kind of a costume party, and some of them or all of them were dressed as Indians, with face paint and everything, and he confronted them over that, and they said that they were honoring the Indians, which is, one way of looking at it, and he accused them of, being like the Kansas City, the football team that the Patriots beat to get in the Super Bowl, the Kansas City cultural appropriators. And so that's another theme that we have going here, is not only are people being triggered by smirks and hats, but they're blaming anybody that white who attempts to honor their culture or observe something about their culture as a cultural appropriator, even for a hairstyle. Mm-hmm. For example, if a white person shows up with Jamaican style hair, braided hair, they can be called cultural appropriators, and they have been at schools.
So is that Orwellian fashion crime then?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I think it must be, yes.
So, and Phillips, after the demonstration, Phillips tried to enter a Catholic church, the largest Catholic church there, the Immaculate Conception. There was a service going on, and they tried to come in banging their Indian drums during the service, but security turned them away. So he's a professional agitprop artist. I mean, he started a GoFundMe page, so he's monetizing the whole thing for himself. And
well, that'll
be the opportunist.
That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Huh?
Yeah, and but the thing is that this standoff is highly symbolic, and who knows what it will do in the future as far as the culture wars. Somebody said this was Generation X. The picture of Sandman and Nathan Phillips, that's gone viral. Somebody said this is Generation X telling the boomers, hey, move over, we got this. Mm-hmm. And
it's a pretty good take on it.
Yeah, that is. And so we'll see how this plays out in the future, but something like this can be significant.
Have you, a friend, or family member been diagnosed with cancer? Dr. Forsythe at the Forsythe Cancer Care Center offers an all-inclusive program to treat adult types of cancer.
Ready to help you find that perfect gift. We're open every day with easy parking at Peckham, Virginia. Go to buynevadafirst.com, your source for all things local.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now back to the show.
Hello, and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Reno's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your co-host, Brendan Trainor, along with Leland Faegre, and Jennifer Terhune Green.
We were going to go to Jeffrey Toobin.
Yeah, we were going to go to Jeffrey Toobin. The media has had a rough time this week. There have been numerous cracks in their facade against the president and the whole Russiagate thing. And we had the FBI, this headline story about how the FBI a long time ago, 2015, was investigating. Started an investigation, and that turned out to be nothing more than a rehash of what we already knew, except it was interesting that Lisa Page, of the Page-struck memos, it was leaked that in her private session she said that they went after Russia because Russia was an obstacle to the United States spreading our values, our democratic values around the world.
This is the way they think.
Yeah. This is, that's exactly right.
That's the globalist mindset.
Yep. And and then the second story, of course, was the story that they jumped on from BuzzFeed about how the disgraced lawyer for Trump, Cohen, was going to admit that Trump told him to lie before Congress, and that didn't last more than 24 hours, but you had a whole day of every news anchor on MSNBC and CNN saying, if true, this could be a dagger in the heart.
And that was deliberately let out of the bag by Mueller. He could have ended that in a minute, but he waited 24 hours to throw cold water on that flame. So it's very interesting how he did that.
Yeah.
The mainstream media does a lot of that. If true, this would mean this and this. And to me, if you're a responsible journalist, you don't report something unless
you know it is.
It's true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. If true, you will sail and fall off the end of the earth if the earth is flat. If true.
Yeah. So
exactly.
These media sources have now become effectively National Enquirer type journalism.
Right.
They're not serious news sources any longer. I mean, I don't know who's watching them.
Yes. And the reason why we brought up Jeffrey Toobin, if you know him, he's the far-left lawyer that often appears on CNN as their legal counsel, and he's the one that said Antifa were the good guys because they were against fascism. But he was sitting there going, I think we really blew it, guys. I mean, people are going to think that we're just anti-Trump without any basis in fact. And, of course, we're not. Yeah. We're not that way. But, of course, people might think that way because of, all of these stories that have been proven false almost immediately this week.
And as you said, you're in trouble when Toobin shrinks from the story. So.
Yeah.
Very bad week for the media.
Yes.
Very bad week.
And other things that you don't hear about too much is that people have been compiling lists on the Internet of how many stories have been debunked about Russia over the past couple of years. And one of them has 50, one of them has at least 35 stories that have been debunked that were just untrue, ranging, of course, from the obvious one that Russia hacked the Vermont power station. That was, of course, false.
That was amazing, wasn't it? That thing was incredible. But I think that number is actually more like 70. I think Cheryl Atkinson says it's now up to 70.
Wow. Yeah, so that number keeps growing. And as we pointed out on the show, Germany, Holland, and Macedonia, to name three, are countries that at first claimed, people in the government at first claimed that Russia interfered in their elections, and then later on found out that there was no evidence that Russia interfered in their elections. Yeah. But you don't hear about these retractions, and you don't hear it. If the New York Times retracts a story, it's on page 11, and nobody reads it, and so once the story is out there, it's burned into people's minds, and these talking heads don't pay any attention to.
Nor do they care.
No, nor do they care. Right.
Now here's breaking news on Roger Stone's arrest this morning. He has been released on a $250,000 bond, so he has. Sprung.
Okay.
He's been sprung from.
And what did they exactly charge him with? That's pretty high bail.
Well, it wasn't much. They don't have much, but if they have you on a traffic signal video turning left, and you tell them that you thought you turned right, they got you. I mean, you can indict a ham sandwich.
Exactly.
Very true. Yeah. Very true.
And and a lot of it is, the fact which is troubling in itself, is his relationship, or supposed alleged relationship with WikiLeaks, and that he was somehow getting advanced knowledge of when WikiLeaks was going to have a dump, and get the idea of what the dump was. And I don't see how that's a crime. I mean,
it isn't.
You can do opposition research.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to roll over and go back to sleep. But I did want you to mention this British Integrity Institute story.
Yes.
Would you go into that, because that's really a doozy?
Yeah. The British government has been found to be sponsoring